The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now logged into WarUp on the WPIAL, featuring your hosts Greg Warnock and Jeff Upson. PAW Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Welcome into the debut show here on PA Power Wrestling. You heard the show name, WarUp, on the WPIAL. Thanks to all of our Twitter followers who gave some suggestions as far as the show title. As you will see, like mentioned, the debut episode here on PA Power Wrestling, the switch from the MSA Sports Network. With the recent changes there, we were able to have the opportunity to team up here on PA Power Wrestling and decided to take advantage of that. And so that's what we'll be doing each and every week for you here. And as we get into the start of the season, first we want to look back into the off season, Jeff. And first and foremost, how was your off season?
Well, it wasn't as busy as last year. Last year, I had gone to the World Championships to film a movie on Spencer Lee. So that sort of took up a lot of time and money a little bit. But we were able to go out to the Fargo Nationals in North Dakota. So that was a really fun experience for myself and Eric Knopsnyder. And we were able to see a lot of WPIAL wrestlers out that way competing. And it was a great event all around for Pennsylvania wrestlers. More recently, we were down at Super 32 down in Greensboro, North Carolina. Again, a lot of talented wrestlers there. One notable name from the WPIAL was Sammy Hilligus from North Hills, the state champion last year, took fourth at 126 in a really loaded 126 bracket that included fellow sophomore Bo Bartlett from Wyoming Seminary. So overall, it was a good offseason, though.
Do you think it was a good tournament for Hilligus?
Yeah, I mean, I think it. You know, he lost a tough match to Bo Bartlett. I think, you know, moving up from 113 to 126, he's still adjusting to that increase, and I think he's still getting stronger. I don't think he has to cut a whole lot to get down to 26. But yeah, I think it was a good. Anytime you're placing at the Super 32 in the high school division, you're doing something right. I mean, that's a tough tournament to come out of. Also,
don't forget your personal news. Mr. Jeffrey Upson now engaged. Congratulations, my man.
Yeah, thanks. I am just fortunate that I asked her not in wrestling season, or else she probably wouldn't have said yes. But yeah, I'm taking that plunge. I'm taking the plunge.
So now the wedding plans are probably either she's doing them or they're on hold for the next 4 months, right?
No, she's doing them. Yeah. She knows wrestling takes precedent. So you know, she's. But that's why I'm with her, because she puts up with me. So.
There's got to be one, right?
Yeah.
How you found her, I don't know.
Yeah, me either.
Well, let's talk about some of the other big news, and in particular, the college commitments that we have so far from the seniors around the WPIAL. The biggest name, the undefeated three-time state champ, going for his fourth, Gavin Teasdale. He had originally verbally committed to Iowa, but decided to make a change. He's now going to go to Penn State. Many thought when Spencer Lee decided he was going to go to Iowa and Teasdale committed virtually the same day, that those two were looking to team up together, but Teasdale has now switched and is now going to Penn State. Why did he decide to make that change? Do you know?
I mean, I'm not going to speak for Gavin, but I think there's a variety of reasons for him. It was right after Penn State won the national championship, but in dominating fashion, winning 5 national championships in a row. Any prospective wrestler who's watching that, I think is intrigued, especially when, you know, that program is very interested in you still. So that makes it a little bit, you know, interesting in the sense that, you know, Penn State had such a great national tournament last year that, virtually, you know, anyone who's watching says, wow, I'd like to put on that Penn State singlet. Not saying that Iowa did not have a great tournament, but I guess you look at what Penn State did, and it was pretty incredible. So, I mean, Gavin, you know, with him, I'm not saying I'm surprised by the fact that he switched to the commitment. You know, it was just a verbal to Iowa, but you know, things change in people's personal lives, and I'm sure with Gavin, it's, you know, he's trying to do what's best for him. So, I mean, regardless of where he's going, we wish him the best of luck. And, you know, he's still got another season to compete for Jefferson Morgan. So, hopefully he's able to go out there and get it done.
When we spoke to him after winning states, he talked about hanging out with Mark Hall at Hershey, and I think he probably played a big factor in that as well. Mark Hall going into Penn State as a true freshman, winning an NCAA title, and just his friendship with him. Plus, you have Vincenzo Joseph there, you have Jason Nolf there, you have some other guys from around WPIAL already there. I think Joey Bloomer's going there. You have Dom Giangeli there. But I think the fact that Mark Hall, obviously, he must be good friends with him, and then seeing him win a national title as his true freshman, I think that played a big role.
Yeah, he and Mark are definitely close. In fact, when Gavin was wrestling in Who's Number One, Flo's event down in Lehigh a few months back, Mark Hall was actually in his corner coaching him, which was pretty cool. And Mark's a great person, great wrestler, obviously. We got to know him a little bit in France, having, going out there and him competing. But Gavin, I mean, that's, like you said, there's a lot of things that are pulling him towards Penn State in that sense. So, again, we wish him the best, and I'm excited to see him get back on the mat, because if you remember, Greg, he did lose in that Who's Number One match to Pat Glory from New Jersey. So he has a loss to start his season off, his senior season off.
One thing he hasn't lost though is as far as high school goes, he's yet to lose a match. He has been compared to Kerry Colat since he stepped on the mat. His first match as a freshman. A lot of talk, and it's only going to intensify here as the season goes on. I remember his freshman year, he had a couple close matches, and the coaches, tried to really, keep him away from talking to the media, especially days of matches. And it's only going to intensify. Every match he has, every second he's on the mat, it's all it's going to be is those comparisons. Do you think going out and for him to at least try to match Kerry Colat is to go out and dominate the way Kerry did and, win by majors, by techs? I mean, he dominated the state championships last year, and dominated the postseason for that matter did Gavin. But do you think he has to do that again and maybe even turn that up to at least equal, if not try to one-up him, so to speak?
I mean, I don't think necessarily Gavin's thinking about, I gotta do this to be as good as Kerry or anything like that. I just think I got to be better than I was last year for Gavin. I think he's always looking to improve and be more dominant. So I don't think it's less about living up to Kerry's expectations and living up to his just figure as a superstar in Pennsylvania wrestling. I think Gavin's more worried about going out there and scoring points every match. You heard with like him and Spencer last year or 2 years ago at the state tournament, they were trying to figure out who could get more takedowns, who get more pins, whatever it was. I think the same with Gavin this year is just him going out and continuing to dominate. Again, with his loss to Pat Glory at Who's Number One, I think his goal is to go undefeated again this year. Powered's gonna be tough. That's not going to be an easy. It could be the hardest tournament of his season. The state tournament's obviously not a cakewalk, especially moving up, depending on what weight he goes. But overall, I would say he's more focused on ending his season. But like you said, the comparisons are going to be made. I mean, they were already made, but they're going to intensify. It's just like Spencer last year. We're seeing back-to-backs where, Spencer's undefeated, 3-time state champion, going into his senior season, obviously, to his last match. Gavin's the same way. People are going to make those comparisons throughout this season, so it's going to be pretty intense.
Yeah, it certainly will be, and I think you hit it on the head. I think Powerade's probably going to be his toughest tournament. I would say, to be honest with you, you could probably count on one hand how many matches he will win that's not a major or more. I would say every other match he'll win by at least a major, except for maybe Powerade semis and finals, and maybe a match here or there that we're not thinking of at the moment at a tougher tournament in a final. But for the most part, I would expect him to come out and dominate, each and every match he has.
Yeah, and I think with Gavin, it's not so much of an ability, because obviously he has the ability to do it. It's just his focus. Where's he at mentally? Where's his head at? You hear all those things in his comparisons, and you hear people are going to be asking about the Iowa. Why'd you switch? Why? What's that about? So, I mean, the off season, maybe the media is not as focused on it as like PA Power Wrestling is, but it's going to start to intensify for him. So how he reacts, I mean, he's still a teenager. I mean, he's still a kid. So how he reacts mentally is what's going to define him as a wrestler and throughout his senior season.
Some other notable WPIAL college commitments. They got a pair at the University of Pittsburgh, the new coach, Keith Gavin, and they got a pair of guys, Lewis Newell from Seneca Valley, as well as Luke Kemmerer from Hempfield, going to the University of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Eric Knopfsnyder and I had them on the PA Power podcast a few months ago, and Luke, he actually committed with Cole Matthews, who is a Reynolds wrestler, but Louis Newell from Seneca Valley, 2-time state runner-up, he's going to add some much-needed depth to the 125 weight class for the Panthers and Coach Keith Gavin. And Luke Kemmerer, another guy who's just been really solid throughout his career for Hempfield. Very well coached, Vince DeAugustine, and he runs with Jody Stripmatter Young Guns as well. So, definitely excited to see the resurgence for Pitt with the guys that they're getting from the WPIAL to stay home. But those are two big pickups for them.
3 big pickups for Bucknell from the WPIAL: Zach Hartman from Bell Vernon, Noah Levitt from Kiski area, and Job Chisco from Penn Trafford. 3 guys from the WPIAL going to Bucknell. They got Tyler Smith, and I think he was the first big name to go to Bucknell, and now you're seeing more and more guys head that way. Yeah,
and with like Zach Hartman, his older brother Mitch is there. Noah Levitt, I'm not saying I was surprised by that, but that's a fit I think actually is really good for him out there. But yeah, Bucknell's not the school that you typically say, well, that's a WPIAL base. It's not, even like Clarion and Edinburgh will get a few more WPIAL guys, and obviously Pitt Johnstown, but Bucknell, it's great. I mean, I think they're all happy to have some of these WPIAL guys heading out that way.
Some other notable names from around the WPIAL: Tim Wallace is headed to Kent State, Isaac Reed going to Lock Haven, Tyler Griffiths to Seton Hill, Jason Montgomery to UPenn, Kyle Hammett to Gardner-Webb, Logan Macri to Chattanooga, and Corey Christie going to Coker. Those are some of the WPIAL seniors, and we'll get some more throughout the season. Let's switch gears a little bit. We go from the seniors to the incoming freshmen. You said you put out the excellent article here on PA Power Wrestling, the top incoming freshmen. If you haven't read it yet, make sure you do and get yourself familiar with the names from around the state. But you look at the WPIAL, and by the way, first and foremost, how many hours did you put into that article? I mean, that's 105 names you listed.
Hours doesn't measure the time. It's months that I spent working on the top incoming freshmen, and it's very overwhelming. And I do it to myself. It's every year I sort of kick myself saying, why are you doing this? Why are you putting so much time into this? But it's pretty fun. It's definitely because it's just so nice to get to know these next names and the next big guys. If you're not looking at who's coming next, then you're not gonna know what to look for. So definitely excited about that list this year. Especially the WPIAL had a very good showing. 29 different wrestlers from the WPIAL are on the list. I do top 75 plus 30 honorable mentions. So as you said, 105 wrestlers, 29 of which are here in the WPIAL. So definitely some big names that you're going to want to know for the next couple years.
Yeah, 29 out of those 105. That's 28% of the top incoming freshmen coming from District 7, the most out of any district. 3 are from Seneca Valley. They are one of the leaders. I believe the most was 5 from a school. Seneca Valley won with 3, though. The most from a WPIAL.
Yeah, and that surprised a lot of people when I was talking to some folks from the area around wrestling. And Easton had 5, which Easton's obviously one of the best teams in the state year in and year out. But Seneca Valley with 3, and you're thinking, wow, that's an impressive. But they've been building their program up for years now. This is no surprise. And for those folks close to that program, this was expected. They were expecting to bring in a nice class, and they did. These 3 wrestlers that are coming up are going to make an impact right away, in my opinion.
Out of the top 29 for the WPIAL, 4 finish in the top 10, 7 of which finish in the top 15, 10 out of the top 25 coming from the WPIAL. Mentioned Seneca Valley. They have the third wrestler coming up in the top 10. We'll mention him in a second, but the first WPIAL wrestler listed is from Pine Richland. His name is Cole Spencer, and you project him to be around 145 pounds. You have him as your number 4 incoming freshman.
Yeah, and he was, this was a tight battle between the top five or six, I would say. Definitely a tight battle and who was going to finish where. But Cole Spencer's established himself as a premier wrestler in a middleweight division that he dominated over last year. He won a PJW state tournament. He won a POWERADE championship. He's competed in multiple different events. And I think he has room to grow and get bigger and stronger. So, that was a conservative estimation with his weight as 145. He could be 160 for all I know by now, especially with those Pine Richland guys. They just seem to grow and get bigger. But, Cole was definitely a guy who I had my eye on for a while.
The first AA wrestler comes in as the number 2 guy from the WPIAL at number 7, Connor Redinger. Is it Redinger? Yeah, from Quaker Valley, and he'll be a lightweight, 106 pounds. You expect a lot of big things from him in the AA?
Yeah, and Connor's another guy who was a PJW state tournament champion. And, I think so. I think Quaker Valley's got a nice little program building there. And I think he just adds to that talent level that they have, especially in the lighter weights. But Connor Redinger is a very accomplished wrestler in his youth days. And I think he has an opportunity to make an impact right away, especially if he goes 106. I think he's going to have a really good season.
The third guy is the number 8 guy. We mentioned the first one from Seneca Valley, Alejandro Herrera Rondon. You're expecting him around 113 pounds. So he's the first of the 3 from Seneca Valley.
Yeah, and this is a guy who has a ton of youth accomplishments. His list, I list their credentials and what they've done, and his list was about a page and a half long. And those are just notable results, but, he's done it all. He's wrestled freestyle, Greco, folk style. His name's always been around, primarily a lighter weight. But Seneca Valley is going to have a good problem. They're going to have a lot of wrestlers in the lightweight division. They have a couple other guys that we're going to talk about on the list that are down in that area. I think he could possibly go down to 106 depending, but for the team standpoint, most likely go 13 to help out the team. But he's a guy that you're going to remember his name for a couple years.
And then wrapping up the top 10, we mentioned 4 WPIAL guys as Ty Lissenbigler from Hempfield, projecting him to be light to middleweight at around 132 pounds.
Yeah, and he's got the opportunity to train with Luke Kemmer. And when we had Luke Kemmer on the show a few weeks back, I asked him about Ty, and he said, yeah, he's a tough worker. We're excited about having him. So he's fortunate to have Luke to work out with every day and to get better at. So I think you're going to see him make some noise. He's a PJW state champion. He's done well in his career. So Hempfield's just got another stud coming up.
We talk about the 3 coming from Seneca Valley, 2 from Burrell in AA. So I think the first multi in as far as AA goes around WPIAL. The rich getting richer, so to speak, right? Is Burrell going to get knocked off? We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But Anthony A.J. Corrado expected around 126, and Ian Oswalt, he's projected to be around 113. You have those guys at number 19 and number 22, respectively. So Burrell getting stronger and have more guys coming up.
Yeah, and it's interesting because yesterday was actually our media day for the Southwest region up at Pitt Johnstown, and Coach Josh Shields from Burrell was there, and I was asking about AJ and Ian, and he said those 2 are tough. There's no one who works harder than them, and they're the young guys, but they're going after and taking down seniors that are state qualifiers. So they're going to push guys to get better around them because no one wants to be that senior being taken down by a freshman. But they're really good, so it's going to happen. So they're really making that lineup so much better. And these are 2 guys that I think have a chance to go far in the state tournament.
Is there any other WPIAL guys? Obviously, we mentioned a lot of them noteworthy. Was there anyone else that really stuck out on paper to you that we haven't discussed?
Yeah, there's definitely a few. One guy that I like is Carter Dybert from Franklin Regional. He's undersized, but he depending on what happens between him and Garrett Thompson at 106 wrestling off. It may not be this year, but he definitely could make some noise in the next couple years. And another guy is Justin Hart. So a lot of names here that we recognize as brothers, and younger brother of Jake Hart, who was a state champion for Hampton. Justin's he's a big boy. He's probably going to go 95, 82 this year as a freshman. So, he's got a chance to make some noise, and he's only gotten better in his career. So those are some names that we didn't mention just right away, but those are guys that I think you're gonna definitely know their names for the next couple of years.
And also one additional brother you didn't mention was Sammy Starr from Kiski area. He'll be a top freshman coming in for the Cavaliers, strengthening their team. He will be one of their lighter weights at 113 pounds. One of those top returning teams coming in is the returning AAA champions, Kiski area. They have a number of guys coming back from their team from last year, and to join us to talk about their team is their head coach, Chris Heater. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Well, talk about the offseason a little bit first. Did it feel a little bit different coming back as the WPIAL champions? Was the practices in the offseason a little bit better or a little bit different than previous years?
They were pretty much about the same, to be honest with you. I mean, it kind of took us a little while to kind of unwind from last season. So I guess that part of it was different a little bit, that, the guys were trying to ride the success of the season a little bit longer than we typically do. But, we got back at it. I mean, as far as having practices at our place, and, we have several guys that go to various clubs and, wrestle there as well and stuff, which, Chuck and I encourage in the off season and stuff. I mean, it's good for these guys to get coached by multiple people and not hearing the same voice all the time.
Yeah, for sure. So you guys obviously winning the WPIAL championship and a little bit of different atmosphere, but you guys came a little short on the state championship side, which I know you guys were really hoping to bring home gold. Did that make them a little bit more motivated to say, hey, we won a WPIAL, but we still wanted that state title?
Yeah, I mean, we have 9 returners back from last year. We have 2 guys that are back in our lineup that were starters 2 years ago that couldn't make the lineup last year. So we basically have 11 starters back, and the guys that were there 2 years ago, they were also on that team last year. So, I mean, these guys are, they're getting pretty focused and, they're ready to just get things started here. And obviously they want a shot at that state title again. So, I mean, but we need, like last year, we were very fortunate we were able to stay healthy, and that allowed us to do what we did. And we need that to happen for us again this year too. So.
And Coach, you had talked about 11 guys coming back with varsity experience, which is a lot. You have some guys you need to replace, such as Joey Bloomer and Alex Delp and some other guys that are graduated now. How tough is it for you to come back and are you looking at different seniors to lead the team? Obviously, Noah Levitt is one of those guys that has been on the podium at Hershey. What's it been like with the group of guys you have now?
Well, I mean, looking at last year, trying to look to this year and kind of see where we were going to be at, it was one of those things that it was kind of a little bit of a waiting process and see where some of these guys grow. Because, it had the potential where, we could be bunched up a little bit this year, or if guys grow into the right places, then we could actually put together a pretty good lineup again. And fortunately for us, a lot of the guys, have grown into the right places, and these guys are, they're very smart too. I mean, they see where the lineup is, and they see where the spots are and where guys have an opportunity to make that lineup. So, I mean, we're very excited and very happy with the effort that the guys have put in to kind of, fill the lineup the way they have. So.
And one guy I'm sort of looking at the roster thinking, who's going to surprise us this year. A freshman that I was pretty high on, I had him ranked in the top incoming freshman, is Sammy Starr. And seems like there's always a Starr brother somewhere in that lineup. Can you talk a little bit about Sammy and what his progression's been like and how excited you are to have him in that room?
Yeah, Sammy's a nice addition. He's actually the only ninth grader that came up this year. he certainly has a good resume coming out of junior high and basically his elementary years and in our junior program. I mean, I think he's like a 6-time JO medal winner. I mean, he certainly has pretty good credentials and I think a little bit with Sammy was, he's excited to be at this level finally, because everything he's kind of done to this point has been working towards, being on the varsity team and being in the lineup and helping this, the program. But there's also that kind of factor a little bit, I hope I'm ready for that. I hope, I hope I don't disappoint, so there's that kind of thing too, that we've been working through a little bit, and, he's been good in the room and we're just cleaning up some things with him and trying to develop a little different type of mentality for him at this level. You got to have you got to be a little bit tougher and at this level and we're going to wrestle at times, and he's going to have, a very, hard schedule at times. He's going to have a tough match after a tough match. Whereas sometimes in junior high, you have a tough match and then you might have a couple easy ones and then a tough one. With our schedule, I mean, he's going to have to string some good matches together. So.
We talked about Joey Bloomer and the fact that he's obviously moved on to college, but I thought the one place where you guys were always strong throughout top to bottom, you had the heavier weights. So you picked up some big wins from guys like Vinny Romano, Brad Nagy, Tom Starr. How do you replace some of those guys? Is it just a matter of guys bumping up in weight that were in your middle weights from last year, or how do you replace some of those guys?
And that's what I said a little bit ago, as far as some of these guys grew into the right places. The middle to the upper part of our lineup is traditionally pretty good. And I don't really see this year being any different. We're looking to start out with Noah Levitt at 38, Cam Connor at 45, Bloomer at 52, Delp at 60. I had 4 guys battling each other for the 170 spot, and the guy that shook out right now so far is a guy that started for us 2 years ago, and Colin Murray. So he's kind of won the spot at 170 right now, and 82 is Logan Pollock, who moved up from 160, and we have Danny Starr at 195, and then just when everybody thinks we got rid of all our coons, Troy Coon is going to be at 220 this year. And we took Troy to camp to Bucknell this summer, and boy, he did a great job. I mean, going into the finals, he was 11-0 with 11 pins, and he's following suit with the other coons. I mean, he can wrestle, and then obviously, at heavyweight we have Isaac. So I mean, it's a pretty good lineup in through there, and down below that, I mean, with Sammy's probably going to start out at 13, and our 6-pounder had almost 20 matches in last year before Darren Miller dropped down and knocked him out at 6, and he's going to start at 6 again for us. And, with Darren at 20, and then Bobby Lawrence bumping back into our lineup at 26 was a starter 2 years ago. And then Jared Curcio, who started at 13 last year, is probably going to start out at 32 for us. So pretty solid lineup from top to bottom right now for us. And, we're just happy to have all those guys in the right places.
Yeah, it's always nice when it falls exactly the way you want it to go. You mentioned another coon brother and all those pins. So not only is it another coon brother, but one that gets fall after fall for you.
Yes, he's a pinner. I mean, he's a little bit lighter guy. I mean, he's fluctuating between like 185, 190 pounds, and he's going to wrestle at 220. But, like I said, we took him to camp and he was around that weight. And there was a couple, full grown 220, pounders, and they could wrestle. And Chuck and I were like, boy, we really want to see Troy against them. And he stuck both of them in 25 seconds. It was just like, are you kidding me? So he's a gamer. He's a good competitor, and he's about 6'5". So I mean, he's super. He's really tall, and that leverage will kind of help him out at 220. But thing is, we're going to have the ability to weigh him and Danny Starr in at 195, and that's going to give us some flexibility.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but all the coons always wrestled up a weight class, right? I mean, Shane, Chad, they always did. Yeah, So, I mean, it's really no surprise that Troy's comfortable in that area.
No surprise at all, and what he did at camp, and I just said, hey, I think we're just going to plug you in at 220 and just not even look back. And he said, sounds good to me. So
talk about your schedule a little bit. You guys have Eastern areas coming up. You guys always open the weekend with that, but your schedule overall, is it pretty similar to last year's?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. The one at North Hills and stuff we're looking forward to. Cumberland Valley's there this year. So I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not 100% really kind of where their lineup is and kind of where they're at from where they were last year. But, traditionally they have a strong program and they always put together, quite a tough lineup and stuff. So we're looking forward to, having, a team from the central part of the state coming out to the North Hills duels and stuff and kind of mixing in there. So we're looking forward to somebody different there. We have Cannon McMillan on the 22nd before Christmas down at Cannonsburg. We have Connellsville in January. We have Burrell in January. So, I've tried to, get some good teams in our non-section matches and stuff out here, whoever we really kind of felt were some of the top teams, trying to hook up with them and get some good competition.
You mentioned the Cannon McMillan match. It's always a good one here in December. They lost a couple of big guys too, but they return a good amount back as well. Do you expect them to be one of your top challengers in WPIAL?
I believe so. I think, from 106 to, probably almost up to 138, they're about as solid as anybody. They have some pretty high level guys in through there. They got some good talent. In through the middle, I think we could be a little bit better there. And I think we could be a little bit better at the top, but, it's always a good match. So, I'm looking forward to that, obviously. Again, I think Waynesburg's going to be really good this year. So, and that's another team. They're actually in the section with Cannon Mac.
And Coach, you had mentioned Waynesburg, and I think you're right. I'm thinking in my head about other teams that are going to make some noise that aren't on paper right now looking too strong, but Waynesburg comes to mind. And also a team from East Seneca Valley, I thought they return a lot and they get a lot of pretty tough freshmen coming in. What would you say looking out around the WPIAL? How do you think the WPIAL is going to fare across the state?
I think we're going to be competitive again. I agree. We just saw at a scrimmage on Saturday, Seneca Valley was there. Boy, they have a lot of tough lightweights. They have some really talented young kids and light kids. And, I think if they can stay healthy and put together a pretty balanced, second half of their lineup and stuff, I think they're going to be, extremely competitive. I think Connellsville's kind of, starting to come back. They had, I believe, 8 to 10 kids I think they had 10 go down to WPIALs last year, and like 8 of those kids are back. So I think Connellsville's going to be a lot more competitive this year than they were the last couple of years. Waynesburg got the Henson brother, got the West Virginia coach's kids. They moved into Waynesburg, and those are 2 pretty nice additions for Waynesburg. So,
well, Chris, we appreciate you taking some time out to join us. Best of luck as you head into trying to defend your WPIAL crown, and we look forward to catching up with you here throughout the season.
Look forward to talking to you guys and seeing you down the road here. You guys really do a great job for the sport of wrestling, and on behalf of myself and our program and stuff, we just want to thank you guys for all that you put into high school wrestling.
We appreciate it, Coach, and we always love hearing from you and talking to you, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon, and best of luck to you and as the season starts.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Again, we want to thank Chris here for joining us here on the show and a premiere episode of WarUp on the WPIAL. Let's talk about some of those top teams and really the top 4 finishers from last year and who they lost and, how things could look as far as the WPIAL and some of the top teams. First, Kiski area. We talked to him about losing Joey Bloomer. They also lose Matt Siska. We mentioned Vinny Romano, Brad Nagy, Tom Starr. 5 big names, Jeff, that they are missing out of their lineup. Obviously, we mentioned Sammy Starr going in, but he doesn't seem too concerned about it. He's got a full lineup of solid guys.
And what Chris mentioned and what I really love about the Kiski Cavaliers is the fact that last year they had several wrestlers that just were unable to get into the lineup because it was so tight. But these are wrestlers that their sophomore years or freshman years, they were competing and they were battling. So they have varsity experience. As Coach Heater said, 11 guys coming back with varsity experience. Add in a guy like Sammy Starr, another Kuhn brother, right? So, I mean, you look at just them reloading. I mean, they're just always getting tough guys coming in. And, yeah, Joey Bloomer, Vinny Romano, Brad Nagy, those guys are tough guys to replace. But let's not forget, you have Isaac Reed, who's going to be number 1 ranked wrestler in the state coming into the season. You got Noah Levitt. You got Delp. You got Joey Bloomer, or Jack Bloomer. Jack Bloomer. So many brothers at Kiski. It's hard to keep track. There's this, I swear, they just only have brothers there in Kiski. But they have a lot of firepower. And again, they're going to be tough this year. They're definitely, in my opinion, the favorites to win the WPIAL.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think the challenger up next is going to be Cannon McMillan. We talked about that briefly with him. They lose a couple of big guys. Obviously, you lose Brendan Furman, state champion. You lose Matt O'Block. You lose Tony Mastrangelo, Blaze Kansko, but Furman and O'Block are really the 2 big ones you lose from the Big Macs, but they return a lot of guys as well.
Yeah, and leading that charge, you got a sophomore now, Garrett Nyhouse from Cannon Mac, and he's going to be probably up at around the 170 range. But they also benefit from bringing in a few new faces. You're going to have a guy named Jimmy Baxter who's going to be wrestling in 106, 113 area. And the Cannon Mac, I mean, the Big Macs, they always – it doesn't matter who they throw out there. They're going to be tough. I mean, it doesn't matter, what kind of experience level they have. They just seem to always be competing at a high level.
North Allegheny was the 3rd team, and I think they are going to have a little bit of fall off because of the amount of guys they lost. Consider they lost Jake Woodley. They also lost Luke Landefeld, Zach Stediford, Jake Hinkson, Eric Hong, Sean Hoover. Just way too many guys that I think they lost that it's going to be tough to replace all those guys.
Yeah, the Tigers are going to have a hard time. Unlike the first 2 on the list here, the Tigers are going to have a hard time replacing some of those big name guys. But again, when you're looking at the amount of talent that they have coming up through the youth program, there's going to be some names on that that we failed to mention on the top incoming freshmen that are probably going to do well for the North Allegheny Tigers, and that's a program that. I mean, they have a large pool to choose from with their district. The school district's a pretty large school district. They're going to have some guys coming up through that are going to make some noise, but they just may not be on that same level that they were last year.
The number 4 team was Franklin Regional. You lose Spencer Lee, guaranteed 5 to 6 points every time he stepped out onto the mat. You lose Dan Contragero, you lose Peter Klein. So they lose, obviously, the biggest name of all, and as well as a couple of big contributors as well. But they still have a number of guys coming back. I always think Franklin Regional is still going to be competitive in that top 5.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I don't know. I don't know if they can. I don't know if they're going to be top 5. I mean, I would say they probably won't be with some of the other teams coming up. I mean, they have Colin Camacho, who's done a lot of good things over the off season. But they lost a lot, and they were thin to begin with in the upper weights. So I don't know. I think they're going to have a hard time. I think it's going to be a down year for the Panthers and Coach Matt Levy.
I mean, you lose, obviously, the biggest name, but you mentioned Carter Dybert as well coming in for Franklin Regional. So we'll see how competitive they could be. We talked about Waynesburg and Seneca Valley being 2 teams to watch. Is there anyone else in that top 5 you throw into that mix besides Kiski area and Cannon McMillan?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, as we had mentioned, Seneca Valley, I think, is going to make a push. Waynesburg as well. Historically, always tough program, and that hasn't changed. They're going to have some new faces this year, both freshmen and some incoming guys that transferred in, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Waynesburg's going to be tough. They're going to be solid throughout. And as we said, Seneca Valley, I think the only issue with Seneca Valley is that they're all mostly young guys. We're banking on the fact that the freshmen that we have on the list are going to be really good. That's a huge transition from junior high to high school. So anything's possible, but they're going to be a strong team.
Slide down to AA in the top 4 there, and really a lot of the teams are coming back with a full slate, so we could see some of the same teams coming back into AA. It's still Burrell's title to lose, and I don't think that anyone is going to knock them off again this year, making an early prediction. But you lose Dylan Jeffrey and you lose Anthony Mara, 2 big names. But we talked about a couple of the young guys they have stepping in. And it just seems like every year the guys who were, 500 type wrestlers or guys who were slightly above average come out and they end up having big years. I see that coming again for Burrell this year, and I think they're going to still be the top team in AA.
Yeah, and until someone knocks them off, I mean, it's theirs, that title. And as I said, we just got to talk with Coach Shields and Chris Como up at the media day, and they're a solid team. I really like their lineup. They're solid from top to bottom. Burrell is, and as you said, having two freshmen in the room to help push those younger guys or those older guys, and they're going to be solid throughout. Lightweights up through the middleweights. If they have some guys filling in for some missing people up in the upper weights. But Derry area is another team that I think is poised to have. I personally think it's going to come down to Derry and Burrell. I think those are the 2 top teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Derry's lost Noah Winsek, the big guy from 220. Other than that, everyone coming back for Derry, so they are going to be tough to beat. They were the 3rd team last year. The number 2 team was Freedom, and they do lose a couple of big guys, Cody Kamara, Evan Sweezy. So Freedom maybe takes a step back, still within the top 5 potentially, but Derry definitely taking that step up as the team to compete against Burrell.
Yeah, and I agree, and I believe that Burrell and Derry are sort of on that top level tier, and then some other teams like you said, Freedom, they hit the graduation bug pretty hard. They're sort of remind me of like North Allegheny and AAA because they lost some big names, as you said, but they do return some. Derry, they have returning state 3rd place finisher Dom DeLuca. They have incoming freshman Ty Zimmerman. So they have some big names that are going to be there. And then South Fayette was that 4th finishing team. They're another program that always seems to get things done and do well. So how can they do this year?
And they only lost Camden Hoover as far as a contributor goes. So really South Fayette doesn't lose too much either. That's why in AA, I would say a lot of the teams should basically still be in that top 4 to 5 mix. Maybe Freedom slides down out of that, but what team goes in? I don't really know of anyone who can really compete with those 3. I would say South Fayette, maybe that 3rd team right now as the top 3 going into Hershey. But the better question, I think, is AA, especially over the last couple of years, has really struggled when they got to Hershey. Can that change this year?
I think it only gets better from last year. Last year was bad year for them. But I think the statewide, I think they're going to have, especially Derry and Burrell, whatever team it is that wins the championship title. I think whoever that is going to be set nicely for the state tournament, and I think they're going to fare better this year than they did last year. So I think the overall state scene has leveled out a little bit.
Looking ahead to this upcoming weekend, wrestling kicks off in a number of different places. Some big tournaments, usually the big 2 around the WPIAL that displays a number of schools from within District 7. The Eastern Area Invitational at Gateway. Chris Heater and his Kiski Area Cavaliers, they are headed there. Some other schools as well. Penn Trafford, North Allegheny usually always there. Connellsville, Jefferson Morgan. A number of big schools will be headed out to Eastern area, so it should be a lot of fun watching that tournament unfold. Chartiers Houston tournament also usually pretty solid, more for AA type wrestlers, but the Chartiers Houston tournament, another big one coming up, and then obviously Cumberland Valley. That's where Cannon McMillan heads every year to open the weekend, and you always get to see how Cannon McMillan looks as far as statewide.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think Eastern area is always one of those tournaments that I love to see, especially for rankings standpoint. That's sort of a barometer for the AAA teams, and Charlotte Houston is a really tough tournament for a lot of AA teams. So I'm looking forward to some of these teams that are going to be competing. But one that I have circled is the Greenville tournament. You got Seneca Valley and Waynesburg, two teams that we just talked about, two teams that just so happen to be making a push for prominence in the WPIAL. How quickly can they prove us right or wrong? So I'm really going to be keeping a close eye on that.
It should be a lot of fun to watch how it unfolds, and make sure you check us back out next Monday. We'll be recapping these tournaments and talking about some of the results. We'll also be looking ahead week 1 in the subsections. That'll be all next week as well. Want to thank Chris Heater for joining us here on the first show of the season. We look forward to being here all season long. And Jeff, you're stuck with me, man.
Yeah, I know I am, and this is my own doing too.
Yeah,
so
it is.
It's tough, but I wouldn't have it any other way. You're much better than Eric, let me tell you.
You better hope he's not listening right now.
Oh, he's not. Trust me, he's not. No, but yeah, this will be now our third show on the PA Power Wrestling Network. We've got Beck Diggity and Tristan Warner, Mason Beckman and Tristan Warner are doing our college podcast, and they're doing a phenomenal job. They're actually doing a little bit better than Eric and I are, so we got to step our game up. But now you and I are going to have our own little hold on the WPIAL. We're excited for this season.
Yeah, for sure. And we look forward to having you guys along throughout the entire season, see how many different wrestlers and different things happen throughout the year. But it's always fun to recap the wrestling each and every week. And any feedback you guys have, make sure you email PA Power Wrestling. We'd love to hear it. Love to have any questions you guys have as well. We'd love to go over them each and every week with you and try to get the fans a little more involved. Tweet. I'm not much on Twitter as Jeff and obviously Mason and Tristan are. Mason and Tristan, I think, crush it on Twitter compared to anyone else. But make sure you tweet us and email us and let us know what you think. We'd love to interact a little more with you guys.
Yeah, you're sort of like, I don't know, you're like an old man stuck in a young boy's body, because
I am 30 now.
You don't use the Twitter much. You gotta get on it.
I
for all you fans out there, definitely interact with us on Twitter. Follow us at PA Power Wrestle. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram, and as always, you can check out PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs. We just talked about the top incoming freshman report. That's on there. Preseason rankings are going to be coming out in 2 days, so definitely keep an eye out for those. And stay tuned to PA Power Wrestling on all 3 of our shows for our podcast. So you never are going to run out of things to listen to on PA Power Wrestling.
And they can get on the mailing list too, right?
Absolutely.
So we got it all for you. Make sure you check back with us again next week, as we'll have a brand new episode here on WarUp on the WPIAL here on PA Power Wrestling.